For 3 months, Jake had watched these aliens, beings he once called friends, systematically strip away humanity's rights. First, they limited where humans could build colonies. Then they capped how many ships we could have. Today, they just voted to restrict our military to 50 ships. 50 ships to protect 300 colonies across dozens of star systems. The math was simple. It was a death sentence disguised as legislation. Vextra, the insect-like Zenthari representative, clicked her mandibles with satisfaction. Humans expand too quickly. They take too much. We must control them before they become a threat. Control. That word hung in the air like poison. Jake had spent 5 years learning their languages, studying their cultures, building bridges between species. He'd helped negotiate trade deals, resolve conflicts, create peace. He thought he was building friendships. But friendship was never the goal. Control was. Here's what Jake realized in that moment. Something that would change galactic history forever. When people are determined to see you as a threat, proving otherwise is impossible. The harder you try to fit in, the more suspicious they become of your efforts. So Jake stood up, quietly, calmly, and he did something that sent shockwaves across the galaxy. He removed his translation device, that small silver box that had made every conversation, every negotiation, every friendship possible, and placed it on the table. The click of metal on stone echoed through the chamber louder than all their alien voices combined. Without that device, Jake's words would just be noise to them. But maybe that was fitting. His words had been meaningless even when they could understand them. As Jake walked toward the exit, some delegates looked up curiously. Vextra paused her speech about limiting human mining rights. "Where does the human think he is going?" she asked. Jake couldn't answer, wouldn't answer, but he had something else to say. He pulled out his personal communicator and spoke clearly. "This is Ambassador Morrison to all human colonies, stations, and vessels. Execute Protocol Omega. We're going home." Those words changed everything. Every human military commander knew what Protocol Omega meant. Every colony administrator had those orders locked in secure files. Every ship captain had been briefed on this exact scenario. Protocol Omega meant humanity was no longer welcome in the galaxy. It meant immediate evacuation. It meant going back to Earth and never coming out again. The alien delegates stared in confusion. They had no idea they just witnessed the beginning of the largest evacuation in galactic history. "You wanted us gone," Jake said quietly, knowing they couldn't understand him. "Now you'll get your wish." 3 weeks later, Captain Lisa Wright stood on the bridge of the UES Navigator, staring at something impossible. New Montana, one of humanity's most successful colonies, lay empty below them. 50,000 people had lived here. Now, complete silence. But here's the eerie part. Everything was still running. Fusion reactors hummed. Life support systems functioned perfectly. Street lights illuminated empty roads. It was like 50,000 people had simply vanished into thin air. Lisa's team explored the deserted city. In the town square, they found a monument erected just before the evacuation. The inscription read, "To whoever finds this place, these buildings and machines are yours now. We built them to last. Use them well." The people of New Montana. Even in leaving, humans have been generous. The same scene played out across the galaxy. 12 million colonists evacuated in 3 weeks. Advanced infrastructure left behind, functioning perfectly. No destruction, no sabotage, just departure. But here's where the story gets interesting. The more survey teams explored abandoned human territories, the more mysteries they uncovered. Deep space sensors far more advanced than anything that should exist. Energy signatures from the void between stars. Technology that was generations ahead of galactic standards. The question everyone was asking, where did they go? 6 months passed. The Galactic Council was learning what they'd lost. The first crisis hit when 2 member species started fighting over border systems. In the past, human mediator Carl Johnson would have arrived within days, bringing Earth's strange talent for finding solutions that made everyone happy. But Carl was gone. The Council tried to handle it themselves using commands and threats. It didn't work. Within weeks, 3-star systems were at war. Then the pirates returned. For years, human patrol ships had kept the notorious pirate nebula clear. Now, merchant vessels were disappearing. Trade routes became dangerous. Shipping costs skyrocketed. Meanwhile, mining operations that humans had managed were producing half as much at twice the cost. Agricultural stations struggled without human expertise. Research facilities made slower progress without human scientists asking the right questions. The galaxy's economy was slowly falling apart. Trade Minister Halvac tried to hide his concern, but the numbers told a different story. Production down 30%. Shipping costs up 200%. Several trade routes abandoned entirely. "We can manage without them," he told his staff. But his nervous mandibles told a different story. Council leader Vextra maintained her confident facade. "These are temporary setbacks." The galaxy managed perfectly well before humans arrived. But privately, even she was beginning to have doubts. Here's what they didn't understand. Humans hadn't just participated in galactic civilization. They'd become essential to how everything worked. Their absence was being felt in ways nobody had anticipated. 1 year after humanity's disappearance, the Galactic Council finally decided they had to know where the humans had gone. Fleet Commander Zixura led a search mission of 12 ships into the Void Sector, a region most species avoided due to dangerous gravitational anomalies. What they found there defied all expectations. Massive space stations floated in the darkness, larger than the biggest cities in Council space. Artificial worlds had been constructed around dead stars. Ships of completely new designs moved between installations that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Dr. Talmik stared at his instruments in disbelief. "Commander, what we're seeing represents more construction than the entire Galactic Council has accomplished in the past century." But here's the shocking part. Based on ship movements and energy consumption, the human population in this region was estimated at 50 to 60 million people. There had never been more than 15 million humans in the entire galaxy. Either humanity had been hiding a massive population, or something else was going on. Something that made the Council very uncomfortable. When they tried to approach, an invisible barrier prevented them from getting closer. After days of attempting contact, a single human ship finally approached. The conversation was brief and chilling. "Council fleet, you have observed our space for sufficient time. You will now depart. We would welcome the opportunity to discuss renewed relations between humanity and the Council. The Human Federation appreciates the Council's interest. However, we're not currently accepting diplomatic overtures. Please depart our space." Human Federation. That's what they called themselves now. The Council fleet returned home with more questions than answers. Humanity hadn't just survived their exile. They'd thrived beyond all expectations. But the worst was yet to come. 2 years after humanity's departure, the galaxy faced its greatest threat in centuries. The Void Hunters had returned, massive bioships that consumed everything in their path. Planets, space stations, entire civilizations. Nothing could stop them when they decided to feed. 3 centuries ago, it had taken the combined forces of dozens of species and 50 years of war to drive them away. Now, after 2 years of problems and conflicts, the Galactic Council was weaker than it had been in generations. The Void Hunter bioships adapted to every weapon used against them. Energy beams that destroyed the first ships were absorbed by the second wave. Kinetic weapons became useless as the creatures evolved armor. Within 3 months, they had consumed 17 star systems. It was Counselor Kinth who finally spoke the words everyone was thinking. "We need help. We need the humans." The council chamber fell silent. After 2 years of insisting they could manage without humanity, the admission was painful. A formal request for aid was transmitted to Human Federation space. The Galactic Council formally requests military assistance against the Void Hunter incursion threatening all civilized worlds. The response came back within 6 hours. Request denied. The Galactic Council chose to restrict human defensive preparations and military development. The consequences of those decisions belong to those who made them. The words hit like physical blows. The humans were right. The Council had prevented them from building the kind of defenses that might have helped in this crisis. As Void Hunter forces pushed deeper into Council space, consuming more worlds each day, Counselor Kinth led a desperate diplomatic mission to the edge of human space. Not to demand help, but to apologize. "We were wrong," he broadcast. "We acted from fear instead of wisdom. We mistook your strength for aggression and your independence for hostility." For 5 days, there was no response. Each day brought reports of more worlds falling to the Void Hunters. Then, on the 5th day, something appeared that made the diplomatic crew gasp in amazement. Human ships were emerging from their territory, but not the small vessels the Council remembered. These were massive warships of completely new design, moving with impossible grace and speed. Admiral Tony Martinez's voice came over the communication channel. "This is Admiral Martinez of the Human Federation Defense Force. We have received your message. Admiral, we are grateful that you would even speak with us," Kinth replied, his voice shaking. "Counselor, humanity protects all sentient life. This is our nature. It has not changed, regardless of how we have been treated." What happened next became the stuff of legends. The battle between human and Void Hunter forces lasted only 6 hours. Human weapons seemed to anticipate the Void Hunter's adaptations, changing tactics before the enemy could evolve counters. Human ships moved through space in patterns that defied physics, appearing and disappearing as if they could control space itself. The Void Hunter bio ships, which had seemed unstoppable for months, were systematically destroyed or driven back. Not through overwhelming force, but through tactics and technology that made their adaptive abilities irrelevant. When the battle ended, the Void Hunter incursion was over. The surviving enemy ships fled back beyond the galactic rim, just as they had 3 centuries earlier. But this time, it had taken hours instead of decades. "How can we thank you?" Kinth called out. "How can we repay this debt?" Admiral Martinez's response was quiet but firm. "There is no debt between those who protect life and those who cherish it. But remember this, protection and cooperation are different things." As the human ships began withdrawing, Kinth tried to extend the conversation. "Will you consider returning to the Council? Will you give us another chance?" The Admiral was silent for a long moment. Then, "The Human Federation will always defend innocent life. But trust, once broken, must be rebuilt slowly. When the Galactic Council is ready to treat all species as equals rather than problems to be managed, we will talk again." In the months that followed, the Galactic Council underwent massive changes. New leadership was elected. Old policies of restriction and control were abandoned in favor of cooperation and mutual respect. A new council chamber was built, smaller and more humble than the old one. At the head of the table sat an empty chair with a simple plaque, reserved for the Human Federation when they choose to return. Every council session now began with the same words: "We wait for our friends to come home." But in the depths of space, humanity continued building something greater than the Council had ever imagined. They had learned that true strength came not from the approval of others, but from staying true to their own values. And someday, when the galaxy had truly learned the difference between fear and wisdom, they might come home again, on their own terms, in their own time. This story teaches us something profound about human nature. When pushed to the edge, when treated as a threat despite our best intentions, we don't lash out in anger. We don't seek revenge. We simply leave and build something better somewhere else. But we never forget who we are. We never stop protecting those who need protection, even those who have wronged us, because that's what makes us human. The galaxy learned that humanity's greatest strength wasn't our technology or our military might. It was our values, our refusal to abandon them, even when it cost us everything. And in the end, those values saved everyone, including those who had tried to destroy us. That empty chair in the council chamber, it's still waiting, because somewhere in the void between stars, humanity is still building, still growing, still holding true to the principles that made them the galaxy's greatest hope. The question isn't whether they'll return. The question is whether the galaxy will be worthy of their return when they do. What do you think? Was humanity right to leave? Should they have stayed and fought? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story of human resilience and the price of prejudice, make sure to subscribe for more tales that explore what it truly means to be human in a universe that doesn't always understand us.